On the 21st of December 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 was destroyed by a bomb over Lockerbie, Scotland. 270 died. Investigators recovered a circuit board fragment the size of a fingernail from a forest 25 miles from the crash site. That fragment, exhibit PT-35B, linked the bomb to a Swiss manufacturer, to a batch of 20 custom timers, to one client, Libyan intelligence. Had that fragment landed 30 meters in any other direction, it would never have been found. No chip, no link to Libya, no trial, no sanctions. But the bomb didn't just destroy an aircraft, it exposed a systematic blind spot. Before this night, a suitcase could fly without a passenger. It was standard procedure. A bag could travel from Malta to Frankfurt to London without a single checkpoint asking, "Where is the owner?" After this night, that loophole was closed. Positive passenger bag match became mandatory worldwide. The rule you follow every time you check a bag exists because of this fragment. The investigation became a test of international law. When forensic proof points to a sovereign nation, what happens next? But whilst forensic science solved the case, intelligence agencies had failed to prevent it. 16 days before the bombing, the US Embassy in Helsinki received a warning. A Pan Am flight from Frankfurt would be destroyed. Officials were quietly told. The public was not. So why wasn't the public warned? And how did an unaccompanied suitcase travel through 3 airports without raising a flag? The target is Clipper Maid of the Seas, a Boeing 747-121, registration N739PA. She's Airfame 15, one of the oldest 747s in the fleet. Tonight, the manifest lists 243 passengers and 16 crew. The load factor is light. The aircraft is flying well below capacity. At 18:25 GMT, Captain James Macquarie pushes the throttles forward. The 4 Pratt & Whitney JT9D engines lift the 700,000-pound airframe into the dock. By 1900, Flight 103 has leveled off at cruising altitude. Flight level 310, 31,000 feet. The airspeed is 313 knots, and the heading is 316 degrees, tracking northwest towards the oceanic entry point. Visibility is clear. The jet stream is 115 knots. At 19:02 and 44 seconds, Shanwick Oceanic Control clears the flight for its Atlantic crossing. The first officer acknowledges. Only 6 seconds later, the secondary radar return transponder code 0357 vanishes from screens in Scotland. Simultaneously, the cockpit voice recorder captures a sudden loud sound. It lasts less than 180 milliseconds before power is cut. There is no distress call, no mayday, and no deviation. In the radar room, the single blip splits. Within 8 seconds, it becomes multiple returns fanning out downwards. The aircraft is disintegrating. The breakup sequence is violent and immediate. A detonation in the forward cargo hold punches a 20-inch hole in the fuselage skin on the left side. The blast wave creates a muck system, shock effect, rebounding off the metal structure. The structural integrity of the forward section fails, and the entire nose of the 747, containing the cockpit and first class, snaps off within 3 seconds. It shears upwards and to the starboard, striking the number 3 engine as it detaches. The main fuselage, now open to the airstream at 500 miles per hour, enters a steep dive. As it descends through 19,000 feet, the vertical stabilizer rips away due to aerodynamic flutter. The largest section, the center wing box containing the fuel tanks, remains intact until impact. At 19:03 and 36 seconds, the wings strike the ground at Sherwood Crescent in Lockerbie. They are carrying 91,000 kilograms of jet air fuel. The impact creates a crater 47 meters wide. The resulting seismic event registers magnitude 1.6 at a geological station miles away. The fireball obliterates 11 houses. The debris field does not look like a typical crash site. It is a corridor of destruction 130 kilometers long. Lighter debris, papers, insulation and luggage drift east, carried by the wind into the North Sea. Heavier components, engines, landing gear, fall into the town itself. The nose section lands almost intact in a field near Tundergarth Church, 4 kilometers east of the main impact. The initial question for the Air Accidents Investigation Branch is not who, but what. A structural failure of a 747 at cruise is statistically improbable. The sudden total loss of power and communication points elsewhere. The scale of the investigation is unprecedented. 845 square square miles of Scottish countryside are now a crime scene. And somewhere in that 845 square miles is the evidence of a device capable of tearing a wide-body jet apart mid-air. The recovery operation, known as Search and Recovery Phase, mobilizes over 5,000 personnel. This includes police, military units, and AAIB specialists. The logistical challenge is immense. The wreckage and victims are scattered over nearly 2,000 square kilometers. To manage this, the investigation deploys technology that has never been used on this scale before. Private helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras scan the thick forests looking for the heat signatures of debris that have recently disturbed the cold earth. Within hours, high-resolution satellite imagery is requisitioned from French and US spy satellites to help map the fall pattern. But ultimately, the work comes down to human eyes. Searchers are organized into lines of 8 to 10 people. They conduct fingertip searches, walking abreast through sheep fields and icy hills. The instruction given to them is simple. If it is not growing and it's not a rock, pick it up. Every found item is tagged, bagged, and logged into the Home Office large major inquiry system. Over the coming months, they will log 4 million individual pieces of debris. All recovered material is transported to a hangar at Farnborough. In that hangar, investigators build a skeleton, a wireframe mesh in the exact shape of a 747. Then piece by piece, they wire 319 tons of twisted aluminium back into the ghost. It takes months, but it is the only way to pinpoint where the bomb was seated. This process is not for closure, it is for ballistics. By reassembling the shattered skin, they identify the epicenter of the damage, baggage container AVE 4041. The container shows the telltale blast signatures. The floor is dented but not blackened, indicating the explosion did not occur on the bottom layer of bags. The damage is concentrated 13 inches above the container floor and 25 inches from the front wall. The aluminium skin of the fuselage corresponding to this location displays petaling. The metal is bent outward in a starburst pattern. Pitting and sooting on the metal confirm a high velocity detonation. This is the signature of high explosive. Chemical analysis of swabs taken from the container detects residues of RDX and PTN. These are the primary components of Semtex-H, a plastic explosive favored by military and intelligence services. Based on the damage radius, DERA forensic experts estimate the charge weight at just 12 to 16 ounces. Less than a pound of explosives destroyed a 700,000-pound aircraft. Further reconstruction identifies the housing of the bomb. It was packed inside a Toshiba RT SF-16 radio cassette player. Test explosions conducted by the FAA with identical radios confirm the specific pitting patterns exactly match the Lockerbie fragments perfectly. The focus narrows. The bomb was in the Toshiba radio, the radio was in a brown Samsonite case, and the suitcase was in a container AVE 4041. But finding the suitcase is not enough. They need to find the origin. This leads investigators into one of the most confusing chapters of the case, a false lead known as the Autumn Leaves cell. In October 1988, just 2 months before Lockerbie, West German police had raided a Palestinian terror cell called the PFLP-GC, operating near Frankfurt. This operation, codenamed Autumn Leaves, uncovered a cache of weaponry. Crucially, the PFLP bomb makers had been building IEDs hidden inside of Toshiba radio cassette players, the exact same brand used on Flight 103. This coincidence was staggering. It seemed to confirm the Helsinki warning about a Palestinian group. For months, investigators believed the answer lay in Germany, but the forensics told a very different story. The German bombs were triggered by air pressure, an altimeter switch designed to detonate at cruising altitude. But the forensic timeline for Flight 103 did not fit. The device detonated 38 minutes after takeoff. If it were a pressure switch, it would have blown much sooner. The maths pointed to a different mechanism entirely, a timer. The German cell was a dead end. Investigators returned to the debris. They need to find what triggered the bomb. Among the millions of fragments, they find shreds of clothing that show blast damage consistent with being packed around the bomb. They find fragments of a child's baby grow jumpsuit with a label reading "Made in Malta." They find scraps of a man's shirt, brand named Slalom, and the trousers brand named Yorkie. Detectives trace the fragments to a single shop, Mary's house in Sliema, Malta. The owner, Tony Gauci, recalls the buyer, a man who did not ask sizes, did not haggle, just pointed, baby clothes, men's jacket, trousers, then left. Gauci IDs him as Megrahi. The clothing links the bomb to Malta, but this is circumstantial. Then, on the 13th of January 1989, 3 weeks into the search, a police team finds a piece of charred cloth in a forest. It is the collar of a grey slalom shirt. Forensic experts carefully tease apart the burnt fabric. Embedded in the mesh, they find tiny slivers of white paper, pages from a Toshiba manual. And they find something else. A fragment of green circuit board. It is jagged and it measures half a square inch. This is exhibit PT35B. To the naked eye, it is garbage. Under the microscope, it is a smoking gun. The debris field contained one foreign object. It did not match the radio, it matched a timer. On the 15th of September 1989, a scientist at DERA sends a Polaroid of the fragment to the FBI. By June 1990, the match is confirmed. The fragment is part of an MST-13 electronic timer. Now, this is not a consumer electronics part. It's not something found in a high street shop. It is a specialized timing device manufactured by a single company, Mebo AG, based in Zurich, Switzerland. This fragment was the only component in the debris field that could not be sourced to the aircraft or the radio. It was the singular physical link between the bomb and a sovereign state. Investigators interview the founders, Edwin Bollier and Ulrich Lumpert. The records are unambiguous. Mebo sold 20 of these specific prototype timers to a single client, and that client was the Libyan intelligence services. Bollier admits to delivering the timers personally to Tripoli. He even witnessed a test explosion in the Libyan desert where the timers were demonstrated. The attack is no longer an abstract act of terror. It is an operation with a return address. The investigation focuses on 2 individuals. First, Abdelbasset al-Megrahi. Officially, he's the head of security for Libyan Arab Airlines. In reality, he's a senior officer in the Libyan intelligence, the external operations wing. Second, Lamine Fima, the station manager for Libyan Arab Airlines in Malta. The timeline reconstructs the operation. 20th of December 1988, Megrahi arrives in Malta using a false passport. 21st of December 1988, the day of the bombing, Fima has access to the baggage tags at Lucca Airport. A diary seized from Fima's office contains an entry for 15th of December. Take bags from Air Malta. The mechanism becomes clear. The brown Samsonite suitcase is introduced into the system at Lucca Airport in Malta. It is tagged for routing to Frankfurt, then London, then New York. Frankfurt Airport computer records show an unaccompanied bag from Air Malta Flight 180 was automatically transferred to the Pan Am feeder flight. The bag flies to Frankfurt. It is loaded into Pan Am 103A to London. At Heathrow, it is transferred to container AVE 4041 on the 747. It travels the entire distance without a passenger. The system trusted the bag. The motive is equally clear. This was not just terrorism, it was retaliation. In 1986, the United States launched Operation El Dorado Canyon, bombing Tripoli and Benghazi in response to the La Belle discotheque bombing. Muammar Gaddafi's compound was hit. He claimed his adopted daughter Hannah was killed in the strike. Gaddafi had vowed to turn the Mediterranean into a sea of blood. Pan Am is the flag carrier of the United States, and it is a symbol of American projection. This date, 21st of December, ensures the flight is full of Americans returning for the holidays. The MST-13 timer allows the bomb to be set days in advance, removing the risk of the operative being on board or even in the country when it detonates. The forensic chain is complete. The timer leads to Mebo, and Mebo leads to the Libyan intelligence. The clothing leads to Malta, and the airport records link Malta to the bomb. The West is now holding undeniable proof that a sovereign nation destroyed a civilian airliner. The question shifts from investigation to statecraft. What does a government do when the evidence points not to a cell, but to a country? This is where the investigation becomes foreign policy. On the 14th of November 1991, the United States and the United Kingdom issue formal indictments. Abdelbasset al-Megrahi and Lamine Fima are charged with 270 counts of murder. The demand is unprecedented. Surrender these intelligence officers for trial in the West. Libya refuses. Gaddafi denies involvement, citing the Montreal Convention, which allows a state to try its own citizens. The standoff triggers a massive geopolitical response. In January 1992, the UN Security Council passes Resolution 731, urging cooperation. Libya ignores it. In March 1992, the UN escalates with Resolution 748. Sanctions are imposed. All air traffic to and from Libya is banned. Arms sales are embargoed. Diplomatic missions are downsized. Libyan Arab Airlines fleet sits idle on the tarmac in Tripoli. Ministers who once flew to summits now drove across the borders or took ferries to Malta. The country's oil revenue, its only leverage, could no longer purchase spare parts for aging infrastructure or weapons for its military. Libya is effectively quarantined from global economy. But whilst diplomats tightened the noose, the families asked the question the UN would not. If Megrahi was just the courier, where was Gaddafi's signature? And would a Scottish court in the Netherlands ever find it? Whilst the diplomatic vice tightens, the intelligence community quietly addresses the failure of the Helsinki warning. The warning received on the 5th of December 1988 is re-examined. The caller had specified a Finnish woman would carry the bomb. The Lockerbie bomb was an unaccompanied bag sent by Libyan men. The caller mentioned a Palestinian group. The evidence points to Libya. Official inquiries conclude the Helsinki call was a hoax, a coincidental threat that mirrored reality but was factually unrelated. The decision to withhold the warning from the public is defended as standard protocol to avoid panic. No individual was disciplined, no resignations followed. The failure was deemed systematic, not personal, a conclusion that satisfied no one. The specific warning was wrong, but the failure to share it forced a systematic overhaul. Post-Lockerbie, the wall between intelligence agencies and aviation security begins to crumble. The CIA and the FBI begin sharing threat data directly with the FAA. The concept of fusion centers takes root. Intelligence on specific threats is no longer siloed. The FAA begins issuing security directives to airlines based on raw intelligence. But for the families of the victims, structural reform is not justice. The standoff with Libya drags on for nearly a decade. The sanctions cripple the Libyan economy and the national airline is grounded. Gaddafi attempts to negotiate. He offers to hand over the suspects to a neutral country like Malta. The West initially refuses, and it's a deadlock. In 1998, negotiators broker a compromise. The deal involves United Nations officials and, crucially, Nelson Mandela. The solution is a legal anomaly. The suspects will be tried in a neutral country, the Netherlands, but the court will operate under Scottish law, presided over by a panel of Scottish judges. In April 1999, Libya surrenders Megrahi and Fima to UN officials. The UN's sanctions are suspended. The trial begins at Camp Zeist, a former US air base in the Netherlands. The courtroom is legally designated as Scottish soil for the duration of the proceedings. The prosecution builds its case on the Malta connection. The star witness is Tony Gauci, the Maltese shopkeeper. In a dramatic moment, Gauci identifies Megrahi as resembling the man who bought the clothes found in the wreckage. The diary entry from FEMA, take bags from Air Malta, is presented as evidence of the logistical planning. The golden chip links the device irrefutably to the Libyan state. But whilst the diplomats declare victory in the courtroom, the victim was already dead. Pan American World Airways did not survive to see the verdict. Pan Am didn't just die, it was executed. Even before the bomb, the airline was a financial zombie. In 1986 alone, it lost $463 million. It was surviving on cash flow and credit. Lockerbie dried up the cash. First came the fear, bookings collapsed. Then came the fines, security violations exposed. Then, finally, the lawsuits, $300 million. They sold the crown jewels, the Heathrow routes, to United for $400 million, and this only bought them 8 months of survival. On the 4th of December 1991, the call sign clipper went silent forever. Pan Am was dead, but the families of the victims were just getting started. Whilst the airline liquidated its assets, the victims of Pan Am 103 Group was liquidating the government's excuses. They lobbied relentlessly in Washington. Their pressure led to the President's Commission on Aviation Security and Terrorism, which released a scathing report in 1990 stating simply, the system failed. Because of their work, Congress passed the Air Carrier Security Improvement Act of 1990. The positive passenger bag match rule was not just an innovation, it was a reaction written in blood. Before 1988, trusting a bag was convenient. After 1988, it was negligent. Every time you wait for a bag to be offloaded because the passenger is late, you are waiting because of Flight 103. It forced the development of explosive detection systems, CT scanners for luggage that can detect the density of plastic explosives. It ended the era of trust in aviation. In January 2001, the court at Camp Zeist delivered its verdict. verdict. Lamin Fahmy was acquitted. Abdelbasset al-Megrahi was found guilty on all 270 counts of murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Libya accepted civil responsibility and paid $2.7 billion in compensation. Officially, the case is closed, and justice was served. But consider this. Megrahi was the only person convicted. No orders from Gaddafi were ever documented in court. No other senior officials were indicted. The man found guilty maintained his innocence until his death. That single piece of plastic was the linchpin. If it had not been found in 845 square miles of forest, there would have been no link to Libya. No trial and no sanctions. The official record says we caught the bomber. But in intelligence work, the truth is rarely a straight line. Lockerbie rewrote aviation security. The bomb was traced, the operative was convicted. The man who may have ordered it died in a ditch in Sirte untried. So in intelligence work, closure is optional. For the Sky Digest, I'm Jan. Cheers.